The rain that night didn't just fall, it attacked the city. Sheets of water slammed against the streets of Central Park, turning every path into a mirror of stormlight. Under one flickering lamp, a man in a dark overcoat strode through the downpour. His leather shoes ruined his phone buzzing non-stop with investor messages. His name was Adrian Wells, the billionaire everyone in New York either feared or envied. But what he was about to find in that park would break through the armor he'd spent a lifetime building. And before this night ended, a single question from a stranger's child would change everything he thought he knew about his past. Stay with this story, because what begins as a chance encounter in the rain will lead to revelations no one could have imagined. Adrian had just left a disastrous board meeting. His Empire Wells Arc capital was wobbling under a scandal he hadn't even caused. He was supposed to be in control, but for the first time in years he felt the tremor of doubt. He took a shortcut through the park to clear his head, clutching the silver-handled umbrella his mother had given him before she died. For storms, you can't plan, the engraving read. Tonight, that storm came early. As he hurried down the path, he nearly tripped over something small, motionless near a bench. He froze. It wasn't something, it was someone. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, stood soaked to the bone in a pink dress that clung to her tiny frame. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks, her sneakers squished in puddles. She didn't cry. She just stared up at him, calm and unafraid, as if she had been waiting for him all along. Then, in a voice so soft it almost disappeared under the rain, she asked, "Did you come to take me home, Daddy?" The word hit him like lightning. Daddy Adrian knelt, lowering the umbrella over her trembling head. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The girl shook her head, confident, certain. "You're Adrian," she said. "Mommy has your picture." Adrian's breath caught. He hadn't heard his full name spoken by a stranger in years, not like that, not with familiarity. He searched the park, expecting to see a parent rushing toward them, but the place was empty, swallowed by storm and shadow. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she said, gripping a small plastic compass in her hand. "It points to the cafe. That's where brave people go when they're lost." The compass needle quivered as thunder cracked overhead. Adrian hesitated, then extended his hand. "Let's be brave, then." They half ran through the rain toward the nearest light, a small cafe on Columbus Avenue. Inside, warmth hit them like mercy. The barista, a college kid with tired eyes, blinked at the sight of a billionaire in a soaked Armani suit, escorting a child who looked like she'd been through a hurricane. Without a word, he slid over 2 mugs of cocoa. "On the house," he said quietly. Lily's laughter filled the corner as she blew on her drink, leaving a ring of chocolate on her upper lip. Adrian tried to dry her hair with napkins, clumsy and awkward. "You're not very good at this," she teased. "Mommy does it better." "I believe you." Adrian smiled weakly. "And your mommy's name is Sophia," she said proudly, like it was the most beautiful name in the world. Sophia Reed. Everything inside him stopped. He hadn't heard that name in 10 years. Sophia, his first love, the woman he'd left behind when ambition became his god. The rain outside blurred into a smear of silver, but Adrian couldn't look away from the child sitting across from him. Same brown eyes, same small dimple near the right corner of her mouth. He felt his pulse pounding in his throat. "Where's your mom now, Lily, working?" "At the hospital. She fixes people," Lily said between sips. "She told me you'd come back when you were ready to be kind again." The innocence in her tone cut deeper than any accusation. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, low and endless. Adrian's phone buzzed again. Tokyo investors demanding answers, but for once he didn't reach for it. His entire world had just shifted to a 4-year-old girl with his past written in her face. "Lily," he said, voice unsteady, "we're going to find your mom." He took off his coat, wrapping it around her shoulders. The oversized fabric swallowed her completely, but she smiled small and safe for the first time that night. They stepped back into the rain. The storm had softened to a mist, the city lights glimmering off puddles like tiny stars. As they reached the corner, the barista ran out calling, "Sir, you forgot this." He handed Adrian a faded Polaroid, a college photo of two kids under an umbrella, laughing, her signature scrawled across the bottom. Sophia Reed, 2010. Lily's compass spun once, then steadied north. "See," she whispered. "It always knows the way home." Adrian looked down at her, then up at the sky where the clouds were breaking apart. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about money meetings or markets. He was thinking about a door he'd closed long ago and the child who'd just opened it again. And though he didn't know it yet, that a single night in the rain would lead him to the truth about love loss and a family he never knew he had. "Let's go home, Lily," he said softly. The compass needle didn't move. It didn't have to. For the first time, Adrian already knew the way. The apartment was small, the kind of place that carried the smell of coffee and exhaustion. Rain still clung to Adrian's coat as he followed little Lily up 3 flights of narrow stairs on West 110th Street. She stopped at a worn blue door with peeling paint and 3 locks. Each one clicked with the precision of someone who had learned to be careful. When the last lock slid open, the door cracked just enough for a woman's voice to break through, sharp and weary. "Lily, where have you?" The words died in her throat. Sophia Reed stood in the doorway, frozen. She was wearing pale blue hospital scrubs, her hair pulled into a messy bun, and dark circles marked the sleepless nights beneath her eyes. For a moment, all 3 of them, man, woman, and child, stared at each other through the faint smell of rain and old wood. Lily ran forward and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. "Mommy, I found him," she said, proudly. "I found Daddy." The words hung in the air like thunder. Sophia's expression shifted from disbelief to something closer to anger. Inside now, she said, ushering Lily past her. She turned to Adrian, voice low and tight. "You need to leave." Adrian stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his sleeves. "Sophia, please. I didn't know you didn't know, because you never wanted to know," she snapped. "You made that clear a long time ago." He wanted to argue, to tell her he'd changed, but the conviction in her tone stripped him of every prepared sentence. She tried to close the door, but Lily's voice stopped her. "Mommy, he got me out of the rain. He gave me his coat." Sophia hesitated, torn between fury and gratitude. After a moment, she sighed, stepping aside just enough for him to enter. 5 minutes, she said. The living room was tiny, but alive. A child's drawings taped to the refrigerator, books stacked in uneven towers, a small couch that had seen better days. A night shift nurse's life, humble but full. Sophia wrapped a blanket around Lily, checking her forehead with the practiced touch of a professional. "You scared me half to death," she whispered. "Mrs. Ortiz said you were gone." "I wanted to find Daddy," Lily said simply, like in the stories. Sophia looked at Adrian, then a hard, assessing stare. "You didn't think to call the police when a strange child called you Daddy?" "I tried to find her mother," Adrian replied evenly. "And then she said your name." Her expression faltered just for a second. "So you decided to play hero." "I decided to make sure your daughter was safe," he said quietly. Sophia sank onto the couch, rubbing her temples. "You shouldn't be here." "Maybe not," Adrian admitted. "But I am." Lily had curled up on the chair with her compass and was already fighting sleep. The storm outside had turned to a whisper against the window pane. Sophia rose and motioned for Adrian to follow her to the small kitchen. "Keep your voice down," she said. "She needs rest." For the first time since college, they were alone in the same room. The silence felt heavier than the rain had. "You blocked me," she began. "When I called, when I emailed, when I came to your office." Adrian exhaled. "I was a different person then. You were the same person who told me your career couldn't afford distractions. You made that choice." "I thought I was building something for both of us," he said. Sophia laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "You built a fortress and locked yourself inside." He had no defense. He glanced toward the living room where Lily's small hand still clutched the compass. "Does she know?" he asked. Sophia's voice softened, but only slightly. "She knows her father is alive. I told her he was busy, that one day he might come back. I didn't want her growing up thinking she wasn't wanted." Adrian leaned on the counter, guilt pressing against his ribs. "I didn't know she existed. I tried to tell you," Sophia said, her voice trembling for the first time. "I wanted you to choose her, to choose something real, but I was done begging for a place in your schedule." He nodded, swallowing the regret rising in his throat. "I can't change what I did, but I can be here now." She folded her arms, the gesture both a shield and a warning. "You can't just appear and start calling yourself her father. She doesn't need confusion. She needs both of us," he said. Sophia's eyes glistened, but she didn't let the tears fall. "She needs stability," she corrected. "Something you've never been." Lily's sleepy voice carried from the other room. "Mommy, can Daddy stay for dinner?" Sophia closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her expression had softened, exhaustion overtaking anger. "She won't sleep unless we do," she muttered. "You can stay for tonight." Dinner was simple scrambled eggs, toast, and leftovers reheated from the night before. But to Adrian, it felt like the first real meal he'd had in years. Lily talked the whole time, telling stories about her teacher, her friend Mateo the duck with the black spot at the pond. Every few minutes she'd glance at him to see if he was listening. He always was. After dinner, Sophia tucked Lily into bed. When she returned, she found Adrian standing by the window staring at the rain-soaked city. "She's beautiful," he said quietly. "You did everything right." Sophia looked at him, the anger returning in small waves. "Don't romanticize this, Adrian. You weren't here when she had a fever at 2 a.m. You weren't here when I had to choose between paying rent or daycare. I know," he said, "but I'm here now." She shook her head. "You're here tonight. I don't know about tomorrow." He turned to her, voice steady. "Then let me prove it. I don't expect trust overnight, just a chance to earn it." Sophia hesitated. There was something new in his eyes, humility, maybe even honesty. "One step at a time," she said. "Supervised visits only. No big promises. No gifts to make up for the years you missed. She needs a father, not a sponsor." Adrian nodded, relief mingling with guilt. "Whatever you say." Sophia opened the door and the sound of the city drifted in. "Then start by leaving. Now," she said, "she'll ask for you in the morning. Be here at 6. Don't be late." Adrian took one last look at the sleeping apartment. The drawings, the blanket on the couch. The faint scent of lavender and hospital soap. As he stepped into the hallway, he heard the locks click again. 1, 2, 3. But this time the sound didn't shut him out completely. It was a reminder that every lock had a key. He just had to prove he was worthy of it. The next morning, Adrian was already waiting outside the apartment building before the sun rose. He had spent the night pacing his penthouse, staring at the skyline as if it might offer answers. For years, he'd measured time in contracts and deadlines, but now every second felt like a test. When the door opened and Lily came running down the steps, hair tied in 2 uneven ponytails, he realized how long it had been since he'd waited for someone simply because he wanted to see them. Sophia followed, still in her hospital scrubs from the overnight shift. Her face was drawn, her eyes tired but steady. "You're early," she said flatly. "I didn't want to risk being late," he answered. She nodded, expression unreadable, and handed Lily her backpack. "You'll take her to school, pick her up at 3, and bring her straight back here. No surprises." He accepted the rules without hesitation. Understood. It became their rhythm. Every morning, Adrian would show up sometimes with Lily's favorite muffins, sometimes with an umbrella just in case. He learned her schedule, her teacher's name, the way she hummed when she concentrated on coloring. He began to memorize the little details that made up her world, the ones he'd missed while chasing everything else. At first, Sophia kept her distance, her tone polite but cold. She didn't trust gestures. She trusted consistency. And so, day by day, Adrian gave her that. He waited outside the school gate, rain or shine, read stories on the couch when Lily couldn't sleep, and learned how to braid hair from Mrs. Ortiz, who watched from her window like an unofficial guardian. But for all his effort, the past had a way of sneaking in. One afternoon, after dropping Lily off, Adrian received a call from his board secretary, his company's biggest acquisition yet. A $200 million deal was scheduled to close the same day as Lily's first school recital. He stared at the calendar, torn between the life he had built and the one he was trying to rebuild. The old Adrian would have chosen the deal without hesitation. This time, he chose differently. He called his partner in Tokyo. "Postpone it," he said. "Family emergency." The word family felt strange on his tongue, but also right. The backlash came quickly: news, headlines about instability at Wells Ark Capital investors, questioning his leadership. For the first time, he didn't care. That night, he sat in the school auditorium, knees squeezed between rows of folding chairs, while Lily stood on stage with her classmates in paper crowns. When she spotted him in the crowd, her entire face lit up. She waved so enthusiastically that her crown slipped off and the audience laughed. Adrian did too, though his eyes burned. After the recital, Sophia approached him outside the school. "You were here," she said simply. "I said I would be." Her expression softened. "You missed something important at work, didn't you?" "Maybe," he said, smiling faintly. "But I didn't miss this." It was a small moment, but something shifted between them. Trust beginning to sprout where only resentment had lived. Still, old habits die hard. 2 weeks later, Adrian showed up at their apartment with a thick envelope, a proposal to lease a new townhouse for Sophia and Lily, complete with private school tuition and a trust fund. He meant it as protection. Sophia saw it as intrusion. "You think money fixes everything," she said, voice trembling with restrained anger. "You can't buy stability, Adrian. You earn it. I just want to make things easier." For who, she shot back. For us or for your conscience? He realized too late how wrong he'd been. She closed the door without another word. That night she stopped answering his calls. The next morning, Mrs. Ortiz told him Sophia had asked for a little space. For the first time in months, the apartment door stayed shut. He stood outside anyway, leaving small gestures. A drawing Lily had made a note that said, "I'll be here when you're ready." Days turned into a week, and the silence grew heavy. He felt like a man retracing every mistake he'd ever made. At work, the fallout continued. The postponed merger collapsed, and the board demanded explanations. "You've changed," his partner accused during a tense meeting. "You're distracted." "Maybe," Adrian replied. "Maybe I finally started paying attention to something that matters." He left the office that day without his briefcase, walking the long stretch of Manhattan streets until his shoes were coated in dust. For the first time since his mother's death, he walked without a destination. Just before sunset, he found himself back in front of West 110th Street. The lights in Sophia's apartment were off, but a small figure stood in the window, Lily, holding her compass up to the glass. He lifted his hand, uncertain. She smiled, then disappeared from view. Seconds later, the door opened, and Sophia stepped out, arms crossed. "You don't give up easily, do you?" "Not anymore." She studied him for a long moment, the edges of her voice softening. "You scared her when you stopped coming," she admitted quietly. "I thought you didn't want me here." "I didn't," she said, almost smiling. But she did. The air between them carried the warmth of something still fragile, but real. "No more money offers," he said. "No promises I can't keep. I'll just show up." "Then start tomorrow," she said. "I'll be here." She looked him over as if testing the truth of it. "You'd better be. She keeps that compass by her bed, says it only points north when you're telling the truth." He smiled faintly. "Then, I guess, I'll have to stay honest." As he walked away, the city lights flickered on around him. He knew there were still miles to go, walls to break down, trust to rebuild, but he wasn't the same man who had walked into that park months ago. The road back to them was long, uneven, and filled with reminders of who he'd been. But for the first time, Adrian Wells understood that redemption wasn't something you declared, it was something you walked one step at a time, even when no one was watching. Adrian kept his promise. Every morning he showed up outside Sophia's apartment. No flowers, no grand gestures, just presence. He helped Lily tie her shoes, walked her to school, listened when she talked about her drawings and her teacher's jokes. For weeks he said little, and did much learning, that silence could sometimes repair what words once broke. Even the neighbors noticed. Mrs. Ortiz, watering her plants by the window, would nod approvingly when he carried bags of groceries up the stairs for Sophia after her night shifts. Slowly, the neighborhood that had once felt foreign began to feel like the center of his world. Sophia didn't make it easy. She tested him in quiet ways, calling at the last minute to say she'd be late, asking him to pick Lily up early, or reminding him that showing up one day didn't erase years of absence. But each time he simply nodded, did the job, and never argued. She began to see something in him she hadn't seen before, steadiness. When Lily's school announced a weekend fair to raise money for the library, Adrian volunteered without hesitation. No one expected the billionaire in the dark wool coat to be the one stringing lights and unloading boxes of cupcakes. The other parents whispered unsure if they should offer help or stay out of his way, but Adrian kept working, sleeves rolled up, face streaked with sweat. When the event began, Lily dragged him to every booth, her small hand gripping his like she was proud to show him off. Sophia watched from across the schoolyard, her eyes softening, as she saw him laugh, really laugh, for the first time since their college days. That night, when he walked them home, she thanked him. "You didn't have to do all that." "I wanted to," he said. "You two make this neighborhood look like home." For a moment she didn't respond, but when they reached the building she didn't bolt the door immediately. That was progress. Then autumn rolled into November, bringing a storm that mirrored the one from the night they'd met again. The wind howled through the narrow streets, and a power outage swept through the block just as Sophia was returning from work. Adrian was already outside, flashlight in hand, helping neighbors carry supplies upstairs. When he saw her struggling with 2 grocery bags, he didn't say a word, just took them, and followed her up the dim stairwell. Lily peeked from behind the door, holding her beagle Scout, who trembled at the thunder. "Mommy, it's dark." "I know, honey. The lights will come back soon." Adrian knelt beside her, steadying the dog. "You know, I used to be scared of storms, too. My mom said thunder was just the clouds clapping because they were proud of the rain." Lily giggled. "That's silly." Maybe he said, smiling, but it worked. They spent the evening lighting candles and making sandwiches for the older residents upstairs. Sophia watched Adrian climb those stairs again and again. His expensive shoes soaked, his sleeves rolled up. By the time power returned, the hallways smelled like coffee and candle wax. When he came back to the apartment, exhausted but smiling, she offered him a cup of tea. It was the first time she'd invited him to stay. Over tea, the quiet stretched between them like something fragile but new. "You've changed," she said at last. "Maybe I finally stopped running from what matters," he replied. Sophia looked at him, unsure if she wanted to believe that. "You're good at big gestures. Always have been. But this," she gestured around them to the flickering candles and the beagle asleep at their feet, "this is what lasts." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm not going anywhere." In the weeks that followed, the rhythm of their lives began to settle. Adrian helped organize a cleanup day at the local park, where Lily loved to play. He picked up trash-planted flowers and repainted benches alongside the neighbors. He never mentioned his company, his wealth, or his troubles in the press. When the kids asked if he was someone famous, he just shrugged. "I used to be busy," he said, "but now I'm learning how to be useful." Sophia started to notice the difference not only in him but in Lily. Her daughter laughed more easily, slept more soundly, and began drawing pictures of the three of them together, small things, but they meant everything. One afternoon, Sophia found a note in Lily's backpack written in crayon. "When it rains, Daddy brings the sun." She folded it quietly and placed it in her journal. Yet, not everything was perfect. One morning, a news alert flashed across Adrian's phone: Wells Ark Capital loses major investors amid CEO's public absence. He ignored the calls that followed, silencing the phone like a man choosing peace over power. But Sophia noticed the worry in his eyes. "You're losing everything," she said softly. Not everything, he answered, just the parts that never mattered. That night, as they walked scout around the block, she stopped him under a flickering streetlight. "If this all disappears, your company, the money, what happens then?" He met her gaze. "Then I'll still show up. Because this isn't charity, Sophia. It's my life now." For a moment, neither spoke. Then she took his hand not out of romance, but out of recognition, of effort, of presence, of something rebuilt brick by brick. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of it. When December came, the city dressed itself in lights again. Adrian found himself hanging garlands outside the building with Mrs. Ortiz and the other tenants, Lily, giggling beside him, as Scout barked at every ornament. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like an outsider looking in. That evening, Sophia came home from work and paused at the sight of them under the glow of the streetlight. Adrian laughing, Lily spinning in circles, snow beginning to fall. She didn't say anything. She just stood there for a while, watching quietly as if memorizing the moment. Inside, she hung her coat and whispered to herself, "Maybe he's finally learned what staying means." And upstairs, as the city hummed with Christmas lights, Adrian Wells finally understood that love wasn't proven in promises or grand speeches. It was proven in showing up day after day until no one had to wonder if you'd be there again. By the time Christmas week arrived, New York glowed like a living postcard. Storefronts shimmered with gold ribbons, carolers sang under lampposts, and snow dusted the edges of every street. On Christmas Eve, Adrian stood in the bakery line on Columbus Avenue with a paper list in his hand, written in Lily's careful block letters, pancake mix, maple syrup, and marshmallows. He smiled at the absurdity of it, 3 items that felt more important than the billion-dollar meetings he used to run. For once, his world had narrowed to something small, human, and right. When he reached the apartment, Sophia was still in her scrubs trying to fix the string of lights that had burned out along the window. Lily ran up to him wearing a Santa hat too big for her head and holding a glitter-covered ornament. "You're late," she said. "Santa's clock started already. I had to make sure he had pancake fuel," he said, setting down the bag. She squealed and hugged his leg. Sophia turned, shaking her head with a tired smile. "She's been talking about tonight for a week." Adrian looked around the living room. the paper snowflakes taped to the walls, the scent of cinnamon candles, the old radio humming soft jazz. "Looks perfect to me," he said. Sophia exhaled, sitting on the couch. "It's our little tradition. We don't have much, but we have pancakes, stories, and a night off from the world." He hesitated before speaking. "Can I be part of that tradition tonight?" Sophia met his gaze, measured him for a long second, then nodded. "You already are." They cooked together, awkward at first, but soon moving in quiet rhythm. Adrian flipped pancakes while Lily decorated them with whipped cream and blueberries. Sophia laughed, really laughed, when the first one landed half on the stove, half on the floor. For a brief moment, the walls that had kept them apart seemed to fade. After dinner, they gathered by the small tree that Lily and Mrs. Ortiz had decorated with handmade ornaments. The only light came from the colored bulbs reflecting off the window pane. Lily handed out small gifts wrapped in brown paper. She gave Adrian a drawing of 3 stick figures under an umbrella labeled Us. He swallowed hard, tracing the crayon lines with his thumb. "I have something for you too," he said, pulling a small box from his coat pocket. Inside lay a silver star pendant engraved with 6 simple words. "For storms you can't plan." Sophia's eyes widened. "That was what your mother said," she whispered. "I had it remade," he said softly. "For you. For how you've weathered every storm alone." Sophia closed the box, holding it to her chest. "You didn't have to. I wanted to," he interrupted. "It's not about fixing the past. It's about honoring what survived it." For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of the heater and Lily's quiet humming of a Christmas tune. Outside, snow began to fall again, slow and deliberate, the kind of snow that muffles the world into stillness. Later that evening, after Lily had drifted to sleep under a blanket of storybooks, and Scout, the beagle, snored at her feet, Sophia found Adrian by the window, watching the snowfall. The city lights blurred through the glass, making the world look softer than it really was. "She loves you," Sophia said quietly. "I love her too," he replied. "She needs you to stay," she added. "I will." Sophia turned toward him, her voice gentler now. "You're not the man I remember. Back then you lived like nothing could touch you." He nodded. "And I ended up touching nothing that mattered." "What about now?" "Now," he said, looking back at her, "I'm trying to build something I don't have to lose to understand its worth." She smiled faintly, tired but tender. "You already are." At midnight, the power flickered again, and for a moment the lights went out completely. Lily stirred but didn't wake. In the darkness, Sophia reached for a candle. Adrian stopped her. "Wait." He opened the curtain. Outside, the entire block was glowing. Every window shimmered with candlelight, neighbors carrying on their own Christmas rituals. The park across the street twinkled with garlands they had hung during the cleanup weeks ago. "You did this," Sophia whispered. "You helped light this place up again. We all did," he said. "I just finally showed up." When the lights returned, Sophia found herself standing close enough to see her reflection in his eyes. "You're still losing your company, aren't you?" she asked. He shrugged. "Maybe. But tonight I don't care. What happens after tonight?" He smiled. "Tomorrow I'll make pancakes again, and I'll keep showing up. That's all I can promise." She reached out, touching his sleeve. That might be enough. They sat quietly for a while, watching the snow pile higher along the window ledge. In the distance, church bells chimed midnight. Sophia rested her head on the back of the couch, exhaustion finally catching up. Adrian looked at her and realized that love didn't always arrive with fireworks. It arrived in moments like this, quiet, steady, hard-earned. The next morning, sunlight poured into the apartment, reflecting off the snow like gold. Lily woke first, shrieking with delight at the presents left by Santa, though Adrian suspected Mrs. Ortiz had played a hand in it. They made more pancakes this time in the shape of hearts and stars. Scout begged for scraps until Sophia caved. Laughter filled the small kitchen, echoing down the hallway. After breakfast, Adrian took a photo of the three of them in front of the tree. Sophia protested that her hair was a mess, but he didn't care. He printed the picture that afternoon and slid it into a simple frame. Below it, he wrote one sentence, the beginning of what lasts. That evening, he returned to his office for the first time in weeks. The boardroom was cold, lifeless. Papers on the table detailed the company's losses, the failed deal, the public criticism. Adrian read them once, then quietly opened his laptop and drafted a public statement. He announced his resignation as CEO and the creation of the Wells Foundation, an initiative to fund community schools, parks, and family programs across the city. "We build the future," the final line read, "not by profit, but by presence." When he left the building, he didn't look back. The city lights shimmered across the glass towers, but it was the faint glow from the apartment on West 110th Street that drew his eyes. That night, he walked home with a paper bag of groceries in one hand, and the small silver compass Lily had given him in the other. The needle trembled for a moment, before settling north toward home. Inside, Sophia was hanging new lights around the window, and Lily was waiting with 2 mugs of cocoa. "You're late again," Lily teased. "Not anymore," he said, setting the compass on the table. For the first time in his life, Adrian Wells didn't need to chase success. He was already standing in the middle of it, a small apartment filled with laughter, light, and love that didn't need wealth to make it shine. And when the night deepened and snow began to fall again, he whispered to himself what his mother once told him long ago. For storms you can't plan, but for homes you can always rebuild. When the snow finally melted and the lights of Christmas faded into memory, Adrian Wells stood as a man reborn. The billionaire who once measured life by balance sheets and market shares had discovered that the true currency of worth was presence, love, and redemption. Through storms, silence, and second chances, he found something far greater than wealth. He found home. From the night he met Lily in the rain to the quiet mornings making pancakes, every small act rewrote the story of a man who had lost everything that mattered and slowly learned how to earn it back. Sophia's guarded heart had thawed not through words, but through time, through the rhythm of a man who kept showing up, not as a savior, but as a father, a partner, and a human being learning to stay. Adrian's journey reminds us that the real miracles don't come in grand gestures or perfect timing. They come in moments of honesty, consistency, and quiet courage. Love isn't about erasing the past, but building something new on top of it. Redemption doesn't arrive with applause. It happens one steady step at a time, often when no one's watching. In a world that prizes speed, success, and appearance, this story reminds us to slow down, to look up from the noise, and to hold tight to the people who bring us back to ourselves. For every viewer watching this, maybe the message is simple but powerful. It's never too late to come home, to apologize, to rebuild, to be present. Sometimes the most valuable gift you can give isn't money, perfection, or promises. It's your time, your effort, your heart. Because in the end, those are the things that last. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support gives us the strength to keep sharing more heartfelt, life-changing stories that remind us all what truly matters. Stay with us, because the next story might just be the one that changes your perspective forever.